At its height, in the Golden Age, you had AI to run things for you, great health due to your genetics, and men of iron to fight off any threats that came. So how was leisure time used during the Dark Age of technology? We look at how a world can be shaped for entertainment, how Dark Age VR was used, and catch a ride on a leisure ship. Let's begin. In Horus Heresy Inferno, we learn Fenris is a Category Omega death world, an orb of ice-shrouded oceans subject to deep volcanic turbulence that destroys as quickly as it creates, a shifting scatter pattern of islands and archipelagos across its storm-racked surface. Fenris should not be. As a world, its dangerously elliptical orbit should have seen it long stripped of viable atmosphere and of anything resembling higher-order life, but it's still there. As a world of such climatic and extreme biospheric conditions, multiple competing megafauna shouldn't exist on Fenris, but they assuredly do. Human life should not be possible on Fenris, but human life is there. Fenris should not be, but it exists and it endures. And in Wolfsbane we learn why the planet is so strange. Horus speaks to the Emperor and has just seen some space wolves and said, they are primitives. The highest art form is the forging of steel, admitted the Emperor. The world has regressed to a pre-technological state, and if you saw it, you would not be surprised why. It is a beautiful, savage place of ice, fire and monsters. A charming experiment in reconstructed mythologies. What do you mean? Horus asked. Fenris is a relic from the days before Old Night. Some people judge this to be a theme park, but perhaps it was more of an interactive place, a way to examine the past or live history. And if they shaped one planet like this, maybe there is more in other places, perhaps something like Chokoris, which is heavily influenced by the Mongol history of ancient terror, or were there many museum worlds, experiences where you could live in the past, literally. Now we have the Strategio Simulacra from Korak's Lord of Shadows. Rabute fights and gets Corvus Corax to yield. End simulation, Guilliman called. Authority Prime. A machine answered back. Voice print acknowledged. Simulation ending. The unpleasant electricity of the Strategio Simulacra buzzed through the back of Guilliman's skull, like an ice sculpture melting under a fusion beam. The battlefield dissolved. Segments of cogitator-spun dreams dripped away, revealing the reality behind. There was a moment of disconnect. According to his subjective perceptions, Guilliman was standing and armoured. It took a moment to recognise the recumbent figure lying on the couch next to Corax as himself. Prepare for reintegration, droned the machine. A necessary warning. Guilliman's sense of location underwent a dramatic shift. It took an act of will not to open his eyes and draw. Corax, who had used the Strategio Simulacra fewer times, barely managed to maintain his dignity. His limbs flailed about before stilling. Your reaction to the machine is improving. You are becoming accustomed, said Guilliman. His voice croaked. His extremities tingled. Being immersed did odd things to the body. Corax opened his eyes. Their complete blackness gave him a faintly alien air. I dislike the disconnect, but the cognitive dissonance is lessening, confirmed Corax. He sat up on the immense couch and pulled the magnetic cradle from his head. Though I see no reason to repeat this exercise, I think now you have the measure of me. There is probably nothing more you can learn from my techniques. You beat me 3 times, said Guilliman, a feat few have managed. 3 from 20, said Corax. You learn very quickly. He stretched his arms and grimaced. Those were my best strategies, you counted them all. Guilliman stood. His limbs too were stiff. The Simulacra is an amazing machine. I've never experienced anything so convincing. Our ancestors must have struggled not to lose themselves in these devices. But for all its wonder, it does weaken the body. He held out his hand to his brother. It is a marvellous toy and will be a useful tool, but it is not entirely healthy. If you wish to call an end to our exercise, I am willing. I do. Perhaps it is for the best. There are no more examples surviving. Corax took the offered hand without rancour. If one ignores its drawbacks, we can see that it is kinder to the mind than a hypnomat and allows the consciousness to interact fully with the lessons preserving a man's self-determination and therefore allowing faster learning. We must make mistakes in order to learn, after all. Korax glanced around at the machine and the silent man tending to its needs. It was something from the lost ages of technology, retrieved by Gilman on one of his campaigns. In its original form, it would probably have been smaller, but the Imperial technologies that had restored it to full function rendered it enormous. Its mechanisms encompassed the room they were within. Thick, complicated walls were everywhere. All the operating stations, connection points, medical devices, and the 24 immersion couches at its centre were inside the device. Whistling coils and banks of clattering cogitators extended to fill most of the ship's hold where it was kept. So a Dark Age of Technology VR system that would have been smaller in their age, that lets you plug in and virtually experience other places not too far from our current VR, with wireless, battery-heavy headsets, of course, for us. Here it seems to push into your very mind and overlay the reality of your senses with its own data. I imagine that the mental dissonance would be harder on basic humans, since it even affects Primarchs. Perhaps during the Dark Age, this was used for training, as it is here, or more leisure activities. Go and experience whatever you want at Recall. I think of Total Recall or the Matrix couches where you get plugged in for my visuals in this little excerpt. And two more short examples. The first, a leisure ship from the Dark Age of Technology titled the Nepenthe. We learn it's adaptive and can change its shape to suit the ship it receives. In the short, an entirely new docking facility is made for this M40 ship. Inside it's the same, modular, so it can adapt to its clients. Deeper inside, it's more commercial, a stage and an unused fountain, a dome above showing cosmic phenomena, and everything is clean and maintained. Avatars for the ship's AI can be projected within its depths. The ship has cloning vats when needed, and we know from vivisecting and cloning a psyche, the AI will go to any length to keep its crew and guests calm, always providing what they need. And finally, the Butcher's Nails. The Butcher's Nails, famously installed in Angron, are inserted into the brain to amplify anger and rage, and this is placed into the slave gladiators of New Syria, making them fiercer warriors for those who run the planet. A type of tech from the Dark Age not even the Emperor could remove from them without killing Angron. They are so deeply embedded. So these are installed in the slaves for the entertainment of the crowds, and I assume this dates back to the Dark Age, since the tech does. Or perhaps the nails are part of a wider set of devices, where they could be used to get a short burst out of warriors in combat before they fell to the nails' effects. Or various deeply fitted devices could be used to get people to different mental states, to suit their needs or situation. Now, let me know what you think to this Dark Age tech, and how people used it. And if you like this video on the Dark Age of Technology, why not try this one?